Good afternoon, my fellow Tottenham fans, and welcome back to the Irish Hotspur with your boys, Dave and Jack. And with it being a very barren day of news, very dry out there, which is not matching the weather over here in Ireland, it's absolutely pelting down with rain. But it's got us thinking, sort of, and reflecting. With 8 days left in the window, um, we're basically just going to take a quick recap of the business done so far and then sort of talk through together what else could happen at Tottenham Hotspur before the deadline on Thursday, the 1st of February. So, of course, as we go through this, guys, please give us your thoughts on the transfer window so far in terms of the business we've done, but also what you want to see as a Spurs fan before the window closes. So, Jack, let's waste no time. Let's get into it, my man.
Who doesn't love a bit of January recap? And everybody smash that like button. Do get your comments in on your thoughts on the window thus far. Always a very good conversation talking about the window thus far. Timo Werner, though, in terms of incomings, has joined us from RB Leipzig on a loan with an option to buy 15.5 mil. Radu Dragusin, it's going to be the year of the dragon here, 21.5 million coming from Genoa, the Romanian. And then outgoings, a long list. And this team is really being reshaped and is being practically gutted, I said to Dave in the back end. Hugo Lloris has left us on a free over to LA. Eric Dyer is leaving on a permanent, but it's listed as a loan over to Bayern Munich for this time. Sergio Reguilon is just, I think, leaving on a temporary loan over to Brentford. Jed Spence is leaving us temporarily and heading off to Genoa. Ivan Perisic is actually leaving permanently to Hajduk Split. Ashley Phillips and Alfie Devine both smashing it already in the temporary loan spells with Plymouth Argyle. And then Josh Keeley is headed to the National League on a temporary loan to Barnet. Matthew Craig on a temporary loan over to the likes of Doncaster Rovers. And then Japhet Tanganga is off with Millwall. So very long list of outgoings there, Dave. And maybe kind of just sort of your thoughts on the window thus far this, kind of at this stage, January 23rd. How do you feel about the window?
Look, first of all, Jack, I do want to point out that, in terms of incomings, you may look at it from a general standpoint and say, I've Tottenham done enough. But when you actually look at the Premier League clubs that have been active in this transfer window, we've been one of the most active in terms of incomings. And also, I think people also have to understand how difficult the January transfer window is to operate in. So you have to have that understanding when we give these sort of analysis about the transfer window. And I think that is very important to sort of understand. Now, look, I'll start on Teemu Werner. Turbo is what you call him, Jack. Oh, great name. Look, first of all, I think Werner, it's no risk sort of financially. But in terms of ambition of where we finish at the end of the season, I think it could have an impact. As for me, my opinion was we needed someone that was more prolific, whether that was a winger, whether that was a striker. Is Teemu Werner that? Me personally, I don't think so. However, I do caveat my opinion on that with it's not like January transfer windows of years gone by, right? Where strikers, there was plenty of them. You had a Crouch knocking about. You had a Defoe knocking about who were prolific, who you could bring in here and impact your goal into your season in terms of goals. Strikers now are in very such short supply. There's not much out there. And come the end of the window, I'll be very surprised to see a prolific striker being sold from one club and moving to another, because it will have an impact on the selling club season. It'll have a detrimental impact. And plus, you pay over the odds. And there's not been many strikers that have come to the Premier League where teams have took gambles and it's worked out. So for me, also and what you don't want to do is put 40, 50 million in, pay over the odds. It doesn't work out. And then you've clogged up what you can do in the summer. So although I do have my reservations about Teemu Werner, I made no what would I say? I didn't hide that when we signed him. But I do understand the January transfer and how difficult it is to operate in. And on that basis, bringing in a guy that's got international experience, can double up as a winger and be effective out wide, I don't think is a bad signing on the general sort of grand scheme of things. Anyone that was expecting us to walk into this window and go and sign a Vlahovic or a Ferguson, it was never going to happen. So in that aspect, when it comes to Teemu Werner, I suppose I have to sort of understand why it's a loan with an option to buy if he does well. I can understand that. And on that basis, it's an okay bit of business. On Dragusin, just quickly, look, I've been crying out for 3 or 4 years, Jack, like you, for proper defenders, but not only proper defenders, of strength in depth. And despite many people telling us you can't have it, well, guess what? We can have it. And for me, the Dragusin signing was an absolute no-brainer, no complaints about it whatsoever. And what I love about it, it's something different to a Romero, to a Van de Ven, where he solves a problem or a weakness in our squad, especially if in terms of early. You know, when you've got Everton away coming up, I wouldn't be surprised to see him start in at centre back to be able to deal with teams that bombard us early. So it solves a problem in that regard. So in terms of incomings, I'm okay, but I would like to see at least one more brought in this window.
I'm happy with their turbo, Timo, and I feel like it's a win-win scenario for actually Spurs and him because he needs to turn his career around. He actually only has about a few more years sort of at his top sort of prime kind of level, and he's had kind of a weird sort of fade out where at one stage he was one of the most sought after kind of strikers in and around Europe and was one of the most prolific strikers actually around Europe and Leipzig. But then since his move to Chelsea, sort of his reputation and sort of his image has taken a bit of a hit, I would say, since then. But I feel like Timo is actually somebody that's sort of for the here and now. And that's what we were kind of asking for when it came to the forwards. Like a guy that does have experience, a guy that's been around the block, knows that, you know, the pressure of being for a big club, a pressure of coming into a team mid-season, these sort of things that I think Timo can actually probably handle perhaps a bit better than somebody that would be a really young, maybe inexperienced sort of forward or winger that maybe we were to bring in. Also, with Sonny missing for this sort of extended period for right now, we did kind of just need somebody to just plug in straight away and do the best he can. And just sort of like I said, maybe he's not going to be anywhere close to as prolific as Sonny or anybody, but just someone who isn't going to be as daunted or as intimidated by making that sort of move and just stepping into the team straight away. He also has such experience playing, you know, in high pressing, really, you know, high tempo sort of systems that it did kind of just make sense on a lot of levels. So I wish all the best to Timo, and it could actually be, I think, a bit of a win-win situation if it actually works out for both parties. And then when it comes to Radu Dragusin, echo the same things as you. It's something that you and I have been complaining about, have been asking for years and years and years. Finally, we're able to see somebody of a proper sort of kind of potential, as well as just kind of, he has some of the basics that I've seen in sort of highlights and what I've heard from, you know, sort of people that know a bit more about Radu Dragusin, things that we just sort of call the basics of defending. Like he knows how to clear his lines. He's a very physical presence. He's very good in the air. He will be a very useful asset when it comes to set pieces, both defending them as well as when we are in attacking scenarios. And I just think that's something I've been sort of asking for a long, long time. I feel like Spurs too often get bullied from corners or from sort of set pieces. And then two, sometimes it feels like while we are dangerous with our own set pieces because of the deliveries, you know, not always do I feel like we have just a guy like a James Tarkovsky or like a Ben Mee or somebody like that who just wins every header. And I think Radu Dragusin is going to be one of those guys. And he's so young and so talented that he has almost kind of a bit of a, like the sky's the limit sort of kind of thing with him, where he's already developed, you know, at a pretty young age. Like he made that move to Italy. He's had to sort of go through a crash course of playing with the big stars at Juventus, then took sort of a sidestep to go play for Genoa, and now is playing for Spurs. And he seems like a very motivated player as well. Like he wants to now play in a different type of system that's not as attacking. He wants to develop his skills in possession and on the ball. So I'm really excited actually about Dragusin. And he's so young as well that he's actually going to qualify as homegrown, if I'm not mistaken, too. That's how great of a signing this really is. So both of those incomings, really happy with, to be honest. And I think you explained the Timo thing quite well, where it's like, yeah, we would want like a Dusan Vlahovic, but let's be realistic. Like people aren't just going to give up their best striker mid-season. And even if they are going to give up their best striker mid-season, they're not going to do it cheaply. You're going to have to pretty much just unload, you know, a lot of your bankroll onto it. And it's just not something that Spurs were probably prepared to do this January window. And we've also taken advantage, the last point here, of actually being able to make moves while other teams cannot. Other teams are struggling with financial fair play, struggling with balancing the books, and Spurs don't have that problem. And I think for the most part, we kind of have taken advantage of that. I'd like to see us take advantage of it a bit more, but I can't complain too much about it. Do you have any sort of thoughts on incomings there, Dave? Yeah, and then we'll go to outgoing.
Yeah, I just wanted to make that point, you know, and now is the time to fully capitalize on it. There's no excuses not to capitalize on it now. We don't have the excuse of you know, the stadium's still being built and stuff like that. So we have to capitalize on it now. Just in terms of outgoings briefly, look, for me, when I look at it, I think there's a lot of players that we've got off the books that were on high wages and for not contributing. Hugo Lloris, 110k a week. Dyer, 80k a week. Perisic, injured, 34 years of age, 170k a week, was the second highest earner on our books after Son gone. So with the likes of them, Jed Spence loaned out as well, Regulon, Tanganga, people like that. What I like about it is they're putting them out to clubs where hopefully there's a bit of a resale value come the summer. Then we can hopefully cash in on them, and they are trying to loan some of these guys out with a means to an end. For instance, Lloris tied down for 6 months. They ripped up the contract with his agreement, gone. Dyer loaned them out, waiver the transfer fee until his contract runs out. Same with Perisic. Jed Spence, there's an option to buy if he does well out there. So I like the loan movers. Pulling Tanganga back in from Augsburg where he wasn't playing to put him to Millwall to try and retain a transfer value come the summer. Absolutely brilliant. And then I do like the strategic loans of the young guys. Phillips, Devine, bought at Plymouth. And I'm one of these when I look at it. I think if they do very well there, they're in that senior squad next season come the summer. And then you got the likes of Keeley, Craig, being loaned out to aid their developments out into first team football. I think all in all, I think the outgoings we've got absolutely spot on. And what it does is it opens up the door for us to either make a marquee signing this January or in the summer. Or if they don't want to go down the route of the marquee signing, it allows them to hit the transfer window in the summer running from day one. No excuses. We have to get players off the book, wages off the book. No excuses. We can get ready to go as soon as the season ends. So I think in terms of outgoings, I think it's been pretty good. Like you sort of alluded to earlier on, Jack, before the stream, they've absolutely decimated it, and a lot of them are sort of players that we've had problems with in years gone by that just haven't been brought in, and some have been here a long time and just haven't contributed, and they're gone now, which is good, and we're finally starting to come out of that old era and move into a new era. It excites me.
The only thing I can really add to that is while we've cried out for center backs for a long time, we probably almost in the exact same intensity have called out for outgoings, because I think you and I both know that in order to bring in these new guard, this new sort of wave of players and generation, it also meant that we needed to get rid of the old guard and the old generation of players that have been sort of rotting up the squad. And we've actually been able to do that here. You can't do one without the other. Like, you do have a limited squad. You only have so many players you can have on the books. And Spurs just had so many guys on pretty decent wages that also just were never favored by any of the managers that we've had the last 3 or 4, right? And it just has basically made it sort of like a standstill where it just was difficult to get rid of them while also trying to bring in new guys to sort of help, back the manager. It's just been kind of a constant roadblock, and Spurs have been chipping away at it this January and did try to chip away at it over the summer. And I think it's thanks to the work of Paratici, as well as maybe Johan Lang maybe played a part as well with some of these kind of moves to some of the lower leagues, when it comes to Doncaster and when it comes to all these others. So I don't know. I'm just happy that Spurs have finally sort of been able to just, Dave, I think you and I have cried out for outgoings almost as much as we cried out for center backs. So I'm just delighted with that.
On that, the reason why we were crying out for the outgoings was because we actually went into the background, looked at the wages they were on. We were stunned by it. And it was like, no wonder why we've been sort of hindered in what we can do, with the wages they're on and stuff like that. So it's good to see us balancing the books in that regard. But Jack, let's move on to incomings. And rather than get into any sort of individual players we want to see brought in here, right? We'll leave that to the people in the comments. What sort of areas of the squad do you think is left to do for this January transfer window for Tottenham Hotspur in terms of incomings?
The one that stands out for me mostly is just that midfield. Højbjerg, as much as I've protected him and as much as I think he's a lot better than some people make him out to be, I think he's pretty much out of here. He looks like he wants to leave. He looks like he has one foot out the door. Maybe the mentality is now a bit off as well, because he kind of just wants to leave. And that then means that there's a position open to replace Højbjerg. If you get rid of Højbjerg, you definitely have to replace him. And then with Oliver Skipp, who, while he did have a terrific match, I think, against Man United. I mean, I think that was his one good game of this season personally. And I really not going to sort of just jump on that sort of trend straight away. Like, I would have to see a lot more from Oliver Skipp in order to really get faith in him once again. And I'd like to see him actually be put out on loan, or, in some way, bring in some sort of player that would actually play ahead of Skipp, or actually at least compete with him, because it's been a bit of an annoyance, I think, for a lot of us to see sort of Ange Postecoglou when he's looking for midfielders to bring in off the bench. It's just been Højbjerg or really Skipp as his two choices for the most part this season every time. And it'd be nice to see a change there, have someone else that's sort of young, talented, hungry to bring in there. Personally, I'm leaning more towards actually a number 8 than I am towards a number 6. That's just because I feel like Basuma and Bentancur are already so incredible, are already so ridiculous. And I feel like, what's the point of, moving them out of that position? So yeah, to re-emphasize, a number 8 for me, not a number 6, just has to do with the fact that Bentancur and Basuma, I think, are already so incredible in those positions, and even Pop Matasar could technically play back there as well.
Mm,
I just don't really see who comes in that would actually displace them. It would have
mm,
to take a really brilliant player to do so. And also, I feel like that is sort of their more comfortable positions because Pop Matasar can easily play the 8. We also have Kulusevski, who's played sort of a harder
mm,
working position in midfield. Gio Lo Celso can plug in. Just feels like I don't know, like it feels like the number 8 we're sort of mixing and matching there. It'd just be nice to have an extra option there that just isn't Oliver Skip because clearly Ange
mm,
doesn't trust him as a number 6. He's throwing him in there more as a number 8. And I'd rather just have
mm,
someone else playing that position
mm,
personally. Whereas number 6, just Bentancur Basuma is enough for me.
mm. Do you know what, Jack? I think, look, I'll start by saying I think everyone would be sitting here screaming at us, guys, why aren't you mentioning left back? Look, me and Jack are all with all you guys. I do think we do need another left back in here to come in here and compete with Edoji. However, between now and the end of the season, I think we've got enough pieces of the puzzles to be able to make it work. If Edoji goes out, you move Van de Ven out there, bring in Dragus in, or whatever it may be. So I think Spurs will look to make that work and won't pull the trigger on that for the rest of this January. So I don't think we'll sign a left back. Plus, we haven't been linked with any. For me, I think you're right, Jack. I think the option, the area we're going to focus on now is midfield, especially after bringing in Dragusin and bringing in a player in the forward area. And the reason why I say midfield is I get some people might like Skip and I get some people might like Højbjerg. And I'm with you on Højbjerg, Jack, believe me. But one thing that I've sort of sat back and I've took stock of over the week, we're in the same position of what we were in our back line. When our first choice is not there, there's such a drop off in quality. Now, we've addressed that issue across the back line, where I think pretty much every Spurs fan is okay, but we don't have that in midfield. And for me, I think we need to bring in another midfielder. I'm with you. I think Bentancur and Basuma should be competing for that deeper spot. I actually want someone who is a replacement for Sarr or can compete with Sarr that offers what Sarr does in terms of turning the ball over. You know, no one else in that midfield can do that job. And unfortunately, for me, that's where Højbjerg would be competing with. That's where Skip, they're similar sort of players in turning the ball over. But Sarr's just more efficient at it and better on the ball as well. So that's why he's in there. So for me, you bring in someone to sort of help cover him or help compete with him and try and push him onto a new level. And then eventually in the summer, I think you might look at bringing in, you know, someone in here to sort of help do what
Yep.
Madison does. Ideally, I would like someone prolific in this window in the forward area. However, it's going to require big money, and we ain't going to do that this January. That's going to be the summer where you're going to end up paying big money for players to improve that forward area. But right now, you improve the back line, you improve the midfield, along with Vicario, who's been brilliant in goals. That's your whole stable base that you can build on. And when you've got a stable base that can consistently keep you clean sheets, even if you have to make changes, you can go and nick games with what we've got right now. But then come the summer, you will have to upgrade and bring in prolific players. So I agree with you, definitely on the midfield shout. And I think it's the most obvious area we'll be looking at. And just to caveat, just one more thing as well, you might see you know, one or two signings like a Nusa, maybe a Vermeeren, where Tottenham purchase now and bring them here in the summer with one eye on the
Yeah.
future. Look out for that as well. But Jack, in terms of outgoings, look, I think Sess Young, for me, I'll start off, I'll put him up there. I think he's an obvious one for me. I believe there's close rumor to sort of be interested in him as of what came out last night. For me, I just think you've got to cash in, you know. There's none of
Yeah.
this. Like, how can you be back up for somebody like a Doji if you're never available to be selected when you need to be selected? You know, we're only asking him to roll out 10 times a year, and he can't even do that. So for me, I think he's one you might see sort of being put up for the window for outgoings. Who else are you looking at, Jack?
I'm actually thinking about Brian Hill could be one that people would say might be leaning, towards leaving. I'd rather just keep him around for the remainder of this sort of season, even though he's falling further down the pecking order. I could just see him as just being a useful guy just to sort of have around, because we've had so many injuries. Like, just feels like, maybe not worth risking getting rid of players in case we might rue that. And we might need that sort of extra body at some stage. And then when it comes to maybe some of the other under 21s, like I know you have sort of in your list here, like some of the under 21 talents could maybe be given sort of a look in, to a club that might need some player in their position and willing to give them lots of minutes and sort of opportunities could really help, sort of really further their development. Because with the under 21s, like it's not always the most intense sort of type of levels that really, compare to like, the championship or the Premier League. And that's sometimes what these really talented youngsters need. They're good enough to play in these sort of levels, but sometimes the intensity, I think, of an under 21 game isn't really matched with sort of a championship or a Premier League sort of side, or even the physicality sometimes too. And I think they could definitely use some sort of experience in that regard. But I'm kind of stealing some of your lines here, Dave. The under 21s have been very successful this season. So how many of those talented kids do you want to get rid of and ruin a potentially trophy winning season?
Do you know what I will say? Look, they're on course for a league and cup double, just like the under 18s. Look, they've already lost. They've already been decimated. Phillips, Dorrington, who's been training with the first team. Donnelly been training with the first team. Robson's been loaned out. Keely's been loaned out. But they're still picking up results. But look, the players for me that you'd probably be looking at maybe trying to get out there for a loan move. Sunsup Bell, Lancashire, Santiago. Outside of that, I'm not quite so sure. But again, let's leave it up to the audience chat. What do you do with the likes of Santiago, Will Lancashire, and Sunsup Bell? Do you leave them in there to try and get over the line with the under 21s and go for a league and cup double and try and breed that success at under 18s as well? Or do you, like Jack is saying, get them out there and try and, excel their development? Let me know in the comment section below. But look, that's it, I think that's it in terms of outgoings. I think that's what you might see between now and the end of the window. So look, guys, that's mine and Jack's summary in terms of incomings, outgoings, what you might see between now and the end of the window, and our thoughts on the window so far. So part of the deal is we want you to give us your thoughts on the window so far. And even if your opinion isn't the same as ours, put it in there, because we love to see this. Sometimes
let us know if we missed somebody.
Yeah, exactly. But also sometimes it can give you a different outlook. You can take that perspective and apply it with your own. And you might sometimes, not all times, but sometimes, it might change your opinion a little. So don't be afraid to put it in there. But guys, that's it from us. And we'll see you back here tomorrow. As always, come on, you Spurs.
In the big Ange we trust.
And because it's transfer window, I also say the Don Paratici we trust. We never stop.
We never stop. See you, everybody.